I met you in the half-light, where the signals hum and fade, words hanging like laundry on a wire we never made. Your eyes were doing circles, like a compass without north. I was counting all the seconds I've been walking back and forth. The clock was missing numbers, the street forgot its name. Every thought I carried felt borrowed, bent and strange. You spoke in quiet riddles, like rain against the glass. I felt something loosen that I didn't know I had. So tune your heart a little closer to mine. Let the static fall behind. We don't need a perfect line, just a frequency that holds through time. I've been trading paper promises at corners of the day, watching shadows sell their stories, then quietly walk away. But you stood like a question that refused to disappear, like a song I didn't know, but somehow always here. Your laugh moves slow and sideways, like smoke across a room. I followed it instinctively, like moths follow the moon. Every step between us shortened, though we didn't move it all, like gravity remembered why it had to fall. So tune your heart a little closer to mine. Let the static fall behind. We don't need a perfect sign, just a signal that survives the night. If love's a map with half the roads erased, we'll read it by the scars we trace. No fireworks, no closing door, just echoes learning what they're for. Now the world keeps spinning stories it insists are true, but I hear a softer rhythm every time I look at you, like something ancient waking underneath the noise, a quiet stubborn harmony that never begs for choice. So tune your heart a little closer to mine. Let the static fall behind. In the spaces between the lines is a connection learning how to shine. No names carved in stone tonight, just two voices finding light, holding on. Not too tired, listen until it feels right. Oh, 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 oh,
Hey, good morning. We're going to give it a few minutes for people to to join the stream, and at the same time, I am going to be adventurous and try something a little different with the setup here. So this could possibly crash and burn massively, but I'll explain what I'm doing in a second. If this works, oh my God, I think it works. Wait, this is, you know what? It's a good day. It's a good day when something new works. Let me see if this is, let me just check on the, so what I'm doing right now is, I'm always trying to test different equipment, and I don't always want to be on, I've kind of gotten rid of the iPad and switched on the Mac, and then I have this new phone that I use as this folded phone that allows me to kind of do a little bit more with the screen. And anyways, point of fact is, this is the first time it looks like I can actually stream live from the computer on Substack as well, which means I can test this thing that I have here, which is this formerly, probably still, Chinese spy app called TikTok, which I don't really use. I mean, I post stuff to it, but we'll give it a shot. Maybe we'll try live streaming there. It seems to be working. So right now we're streaming on, because people have asked me, where can I catch your live streams? So Rumble, Locals, Rumble, Locals, YouTube, Twitch, X, TikTok, Substack. Now, if that's not enough, I don't know what to do. I'm sorry. I'm trying to accommodate everybody. Good morning and happy Valentine's Day from Cape Breton. Well, good morning to you, Rick, as well. I'm not going to wish you a happy Valentine's Day, but perhaps to whoever's special in your life. We want to wish them a happy V-Day, and I hope you all have people around you who love you, and if not, then, well, you have me. I can be everybody's Valentine. We can all be each other's Valentines and make the world a little bit better place today. So we're going to talk about a few things. Hold on. I'm getting all sorts of messages here on the Chinese spyware app. That's no longer Chinese spyware, even though it probably is, formerly known as, well, and still known as TikTok. But anyways, good morning to all of you. And I hope you're going to have the most wonderful Saturday of your life so far, because there's going to be better ones when we come together on future Saturdays. But this is the best one so far. That's right. I'd like to begin with a land acknowledgement. Please like, share, and subscribe to the most, wingnuts as you can. Let's make them a little bit annoyed, but hopefully we can help break them out of the echo chamber they are trapped in with the new Canadian land acknowledgement, which is, we'd like to gently acknowledge that we're standing on the traditional territory of, well, whoever was here and was savagely killing each other at the time. Anyway, they aren't here. They aren't in charge anymore. And we're going to be here until the Americans take over. Take a sip. Hope you have your coffee. So, lots going on in the world today. First, as we already touched on, it is Valentine's Day, and I hope all of you are having an amazing day. And we can all be each other's Valentines, and method of support for each other. For those out there who are suffering a little bit of loneliness, I feel you. Don't feel lonely. Don't feel lonely. That's why we are here together, because you do have a network of friends online. And for those of you who want to join the Discord server and talk to some of those people, let me know. I'll be posting those links sometime very soon. We're trying to figure out if we're going to have custom links or not. But anyways, I will try to post that and get through to all of you, and have you all have the opportunity to post your memes, your links, any of that sort of stuff that you would like to put up. The meme channel in the Discord is absolutely hysterical. I also recommend, for those of you not following already on Substack, that's where you can find the articles that I get pushed through to certain media platforms. Live streaming is there as well, and I'll have a means of communication directly over Substack shortly. So a little bit of a review. Did I make the case for Bad Bunny? that why Bad Bunny is so awful, and he's primarily awful in the eyes of most Latinos. Most people in Latin America think it's just ghetto trash. That's kind of how they look at Bad Bunny, and I think I maybe maybe it wasn't clearly laid out, but that connection between the Bad Bunny sort of industrial propaganda complex that does pair with the other idea I wanted to push forward, which was the idea of it's no longer legacy media versus alternative media. It is captured media. And legacy media has been captured, as we know, for decades and for generations. And since the trucker convoy, they have the establishment, if you want to call them. I mean, that's a whole other conversation for another day. But I've worked diligently on capturing alternative media, which is why you see the same YouTubers, podcasters, propagandists in many cases, recycling the same narratives, the same 5 stories all the time, the same guests repeatedly. That is a propaganda network that everybody is being exposed to. That's just kind of how the world works. I also mentioned the little test that you can do to slip people into cognitive dissonance, so you can kind of see the software of how human beings, how they behave and how they react to certain stimulus. And the cognitive dissonance test, for those, especially those of you who are on this other platform for the first time, it's really the 7 signs of cognitive dissonance that you can push people into, and they are you say something they don't like, you say something that's maybe around a painted topic that they have anger around, and you give them an opinion that's the complete opposite of their worldview. They're going to respond with one of these 7 traits, which we call the 7 signs of cognitive dissonance. This comes from Scott Adams, who correctly articulated this phenomenon. That is something that is well known to people who study certain types of communication and hypnosis. So the 7 signs of cognitive dissonance are: change the topic, mind reading, ad hominem, it's when they attack you, word salad, an analogy instead of a reason, it's too complicated to explain, or the so you're saying straw man, which they're just going to give the most uncharitable interpretation of what you've said. A good example of that was the Kathy Newman interview with Jordan Peterson, where you can correctly see what that framing of a cognitive dissonance is like. And sooner or later, more and more people will understand these phenomenons, and they'll understand that this is kind of the programming of how we all operate. And once you understand that this is our base level programming, that becomes the hedge against the brainwashing that you would be subjected to. That's why it's kind of important to learn this stuff. But anyways, that is we'll call it the Epstein cognitive dissonance test. I encourage all of you to try it and see what you see the results that you get. I'm willing to bet if a bunch of you tried it individually in different places in different parts of the world, and you compared notes, you would see the exact same or very similar results. And that is how that is the human operating system. That's how we all kind of function day to day. We talked a little bit about Mamdani, the garbage king of New York, and the rat situation in New York City, which is going to get really interesting as things warm up for the summer and we start to see some heat and humidity in that region. It's going to be very interesting to see what happens to New York. And I just hate to tell, New Yorkers, guess what? That's what happens when you elect a jihad colonizer. It's going to turn your city into a garbage dump and look like the garbage dump that they came from. Where'd that guy come from? Like Uganda or something? I have a rule. If you don't want to travel somewhere, then you don't want those people running your city. I'm sorry. It sounds insensitive. But I'm saying newcomers. I'm not saying people who have integrated and become part of the culture. I'm talking about the new arrivals, like the garbage king of New York. and one of his clan, what's her name? It's Nerdine Kiswani, has decided that she's now calling for a ban of pets in the city of New York. So no dogs and no cats. So all those cat ladies who, I don't know, all of them, but the cat ladies who voted for the garbage king of New York, he wants to get rid of Fluffy, and he's having a cutout to try to lay out the foundation for that. That's what you would call somebody like her, you know. And so I think we talked a little bit about cutouts in a previous stream, and but that's the phenomenon, how these collectivist organizations and movements function. Okay, so let's get into some interesting stuff that I think some of you will find funny. I see a whole bunch of question marks like Plinkett. All these question marks. Yeah. The garbage king of New York, Mamdani, he wants to get rid of, they want to ban pets from the city of New York. Presumably they don't want to ban rats, which is why you have all the piles of garbage there. Rats are okay, but Fluffy and Snickers, they're not okay. Anyways, what are you going to do? People never seem to learn their lesson in the West for whatever reason. And maybe one day they will. Maybe, who knows? So over on Bluesky, so for people who don't know, Bluesky is my Soviet term for blue sky, because it is the most Soviet of social media platforms. Scott Adams, for those of you who remember him, because I know there's some of Scott's audience who watch this, because some of us have interacted on a number of occasions. He used to talk about somebody by the name of, he coined this idea of a Rupar. And this was around an individual who created this tactic, or let's just say popularized this tactic recently. It was created by this guy named Aaron Rupar, but the strategy, the tactic, is called the Rupar. Now, Aaron Rupar claims to be a journalist, but he does something very unique in journalism. He's an innovator, and what he does, he'll take a short clip of somebody, a politician, whatever, thinking, usually Trump. He's got TDS, so it's always just Trump all day long, right? So he'll take a video segment of Trump, doing a Q&A with the media. And what he'll do is he'll re-upload it, but he'll delete the setup that gives context to the statement and the post-clip rationalization, which often is the case. So he's essentially quote mining in video form. And do you know what quote mining is? Quote mining is very popular in journalism. That's how people get brainwashed by the media. So I will do, because I've been in media scrums before, so I'll give a detailed explanation, and I'll have a phrase in there that in context makes complete sense, because all language is contextual. So they'll strip all the context out, and then they'll just quote in the media, he said these exact words. Okay, yeah, but what's the context of those words? They strip the context, and then they infer their own context. That's the brainwashing strategy. That's why people have gone to the radical extremes. Either the radical leftists are the one who really introduced that, and that's what's causing chaos in the world right now. That's kind of where it started. So what a Rupar is doing that in video form. And that is a persuasion tactic. Do you know what it's called? Because I've talked about some of these persuasion tactics in previous streams. So think about it. You have a phrase that could, within context, is completely rational. You edit the setup, you delete the rationalization, and then you just post the phrase itself, and then you ask questions, and you say things like, why would Trump say this? What's the persuasion tactic there? The persuasion tactic, I got to see the comments here. Good morning, Heidi. The persuasion tactic is the curiosity gap. So what he's trying to do is he's trying to just take this individual phrase on its own, strip the context, and leave you a little bit blind. how to interpret, well, why would he say that? And then if the curiosity gap is your subconscious trying to fill in what the rationale is, what the context, because the context has been stripped. And we have this weird thing with human behavior is if we cannot distinguish or come up with a quick, rational explanation for something, anything, immediately, we often go to the most irrational thing, the most emotive justification. So that's how they're brainwashing people, right? They know there's enough of a curiosity gap and it's so vague that people, there's no clear and obvious reason somebody would say that. So we jump subconsciously to the most extreme things. So you see this is where all the alien conspiracy theories come from. Oh, there's a light in the sky. What is it? I don't know. It's got to be aliens, right? You don't go to, well, maybe it's close to an airbase that has experimental aircraft. Maybe SpaceX has a low-flying satellite. Maybe it's if it's 10 years ago, maybe it's some sort of military drone. Maybe it was an optical effect with the atmosphere. Like, it could be a whole bunch of different things. But no, we jump to aliens because in the absence of a rational explanation, human beings go to the most irrational explanation. This is what the radical left has been doing for many years to many of you to try to brainwash you, create as much of a curiosity gap that you're kind of flying blind. And, to some people just like, okay, I don't really know what it is. But other people, especially the younger they are, they go to the more extreme, more emotive thing. Oh, he must be a racist, right? A basic example of this that you've seen, around politics is the Fine People hoax. And we all know what that is now, where they said, oh, Trump is a white supremacist and whatever, when clearly he said the exact opposite. Why? Because they deleted the setup, they deleted the rationalization, and they just showed there's fine people on both sides, and they missed but I condemn all extremists. Like, all of that was missed. Another example of this, like this, here's a basic example of the importance of context and language. I'll give you an example. Here's a quote. It's a little thing I made up of certain scenarios we've all been in when we were younger and hanging out with our friends, sort of thing. It still sometimes happens. I was hanging out with my buddies playing pool, and let me do this first. Remove that. Let me give another explanation. So here's an example of a quote. Okay, we're going to do it this way. Here's a quote that has been Rupar'd. So the context was stripped away. The post-rationalization has been stripped away. And I'm just going to give you the quote. I'm going to kill that guy. I'm going to kill that guy. Right? Who would say that? Who would say something like that? Well, with context, I was hanging out with my buddies playing pool, and I told my friend Steve, if he wins again, I'm going to kill that guy. Then we laughed because the guy was an MMA fighter. Right? So that becomes just slang. And this is what is done to all of you repeatedly through the fake news industrial complex. And Aaron Rupar seems to be the guy most focused on doing this in video form to radicalize as many people as possible. So it is intentional. They know exactly what they're doing. They know exactly how to radicalize people using, in this case, the curiosity gap. So, guess who is all over? I started with Blue Ski, Soviet Blue Sky, which is Soviet anyways. Guess who is all over Blue Ski? Guess who has one of the largest accounts over on Blue Ski? That's right, Aaron Rupar. So it's completely intentional. And the reality is, this is why we're likely to get another Joseph McCarthy on steroids. These people, unfortunately, they only understand force. And they are religious fanatics. And their religion is collectivism, right? They are as more fanatical than most. That's why they get along well with the Islamists, who are also religious fanatics. These people are all religious fanatics, and they all have a philosophical collectivist foundation of their worldview. So, yeah, that's going to result in what's called, the intel people called reciprocal radicalization, or reciprocal extremism. This is why you're going to get a Joseph McCarthy to try to put an end to this, because these people don't stop, because they are exactly this. They're fanatics. And by the way, when I talk in these streams about the processes of changing people's minds and incrementalism and how to reach them and how to be empathetic when you talk to them, I'm not referring to the 15% of fanatics that are so brainwashed into their ideology they can't have their minds changed. Like, there are some people like that, unfortunately. Those aren't the people you want to waste your time on trying to reach, because unfortunately that's exactly what it's going to be. But most of us are pretty rational. The majority of people you can reach, because most people are not religious fanatics. But unfortunately, it'll take a Joseph McCarthy type figure to stamp out the remaining 15%. And by the way, yes, I've also been a victim of a Rupar, but in my case, it was from the conservatives. And this is why I often say almost everyone in politics is a communist. Now, that's intentionally hyperbolic, but that's just the way it is. They're all trying to suck off the government for their career, because they can't cut it in the private sector. So they're all a variation of the same thing, unfortunately. Anyways, good morning, Jess, and happy Valentine's today to you too. Jess says like, share, and subscribe, y'all. And to you too, and happy Valentine's to you, Jess, and to Rocky, and all of your loved ones who I know you are surrounded by right now. So anyways, that's what's happening over on Bluesky. Aaron Rupar is building his career, and I think he's the largest account on Bluesky, or one of the largest accounts. He's got over 1 million followers or something like that. I wonder if Jack Dorsey has a big account. I didn't check. And by the way, Jack Dorsey, you talked about a snake, as somebody who's repeatedly, on Joe Rogan, I'm not left wing, I'm not right wing, I'm just somewhere in the middle. Well, it's funny that when he controlled Twitter, it was a left wing echo chamber. He sold Twitter, and he went and created another extremist left wing echo chamber. So if there's somebody that should not be trusted, I don't know. Maybe there's another motivation that I'm not seeing, or as somebody once said, maybe he doesn't have a choice. Maybe there are certain business arrangements where he has no choice, or maybe political arrangements. Who knows? All right, into the area of cognitive dissonance and people who chase confirmation bias versus the truth. You do know, I think I mentioned this in previous streams. People don't care about the truth, right? Like, we care about the truth when the truth fits our confirmation bias and our framing of the world. But really, truth, unfortunately, is kind of secondary for a lot of us, right? Jess says, I have 2 followers and I haven't even started my channel. Well, great for you, Jess. I'm very excited for you. That's awesome. So yeah, that's kind of how we're all, unfortunately, that's our wiring system. That's our programming. We like to tell ourselves we care about the truth, but I'll give an example. You tell me, what do you think is going to happen? So this week over in the Middle East, and well, I guess Europe, because it's geopolitical as well in nature, there was an article in a number of publications and think tanks that put this information out. And the one I got here was the Jerusalem Post, which is, I guess, one of the mainstream newspapers over there. It said 72% of deaths were enemy combatants. So 72% of Hamas deaths were enemy combatants. And that is an admission from Hamas. Remember, they kept saying, 60 billion people killed. And anybody who's familiar with the Middle East knows this strategy that they do, the Islamists do all the time, It's a sewage of exaggerated claims and false facts and fabrications. And so they said for how long, whatever, 60 billion died, whatever, who knows, changed every day. This was familiar to many of us who are familiar with the history of the region. I remember when I was younger, there was called the massacre in Jenin, the whole massacre, and they would go on. The Islamist trash would, still unshowered, would go on some legacy news outlet that was pushing communism, like the BBC, and they would say, "Oh, there's 50,000 people dead." I think the Jenin massacres was something. 2,500 people were killed, 3,000 people killed, many women, many children. They always do that. Think of the children. Many women and children, because they know that touches on Western sensibilities, because this is propaganda. So it was, I think it was 2,500, if I remember correctly, or 2,500 to 5,000. Innocent women and children were killed, right? Just slaughter. And long after, maybe a month after, 2 months after, the dust settled, it turned out it wasn't actually thousands of people that were killed and women and children and blah, blah, blah. It was 59 people were killed, and by their own rockets that landed on themselves. So when we heard all of these, 50,000 Hamas innocent people are murdered, blah, 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 we're like, listen, we've seen this so many times from these trash bags. It's always the same BS. Just throw out a big number, say women and children, and the lefties in the West lose their minds and start crying in horror. Oh my God. Anyways, so what's happened with Hamas now? The genocide in Gaza. Well, Hamas has now admitted, because they do pay people who are martyrs, they pay their families after they've engaged in the jihad. They have admitted they have 50,000 people. This is Hamas has 50,000 people they need to pay for martyrs who engaged in combat, meaning burning women alive. Those martyrs have to be paid by Hamas. So Hamas is running out of money because they need to pay all these, terrorists is even too good of a name for them, but they need to pay all these garbage killers $50,000 to the families of those who died. And what's interesting about it, that means there's a remaining approximately 8,000 people who seem to be sacrificial deaths for Hamas, because as we all know, those with brains know that they use people as human shields. So 50,000 Al-Qaeda wannabes were killed in battle when the Israelis kind of engaged with them, and 8,000 innocent people were sacrificed by Hamas as human shields. Know what's interesting about that? That's exactly what Israel said. And nobody listened. No. You would hear this over and over again. The other side, there's tens of thousands of people killed. No, they're people with guns who are trying to go murder people. And what's interesting is those who are primed with this obsession over Israel, this was a Muslim Brotherhood strategy that started in the 1960s. What's interesting is those who are primed to have this obsession and this delusion about really this irrelevant country the size of El Salvador in the Middle East, that's the only country engaged with Islamic terrorism kinetically, which is why they're always being smeared by the jihadis who are in the West, right? So what's my point? What's the point in all of this, right? Okay, so fine. We knew from the beginning the numbers were bullshit, because they always are, because they always do the same thing. The suckers in the West fall for it, because that's another persuasion tactic. I call it the first past the post, meaning the first narrative that gets out there, true or not, that just becomes what people absorb in a vacuum of knowledge about a situation, right? So we knew that was all nonsense. Will all the people, the Tucker Carlsons, the Dave Smith, the Fed Dave Smith, I like to call them, and the others who were insensitive, I can't speak today, incentivized to parrot Hamas propaganda. Will they admit they were wrong the entire time? Will they admit they were deceptive the entire time? Do you think you're going to hear Dave Smith come out and say, wow, oh my God, Hamas has to pay 50,000 families whose children were Hamas fighters and martyrs? We now have to go pay, we have to pay them. So clearly, it wasn't the innocent women and children like they had been saying all this time, or a targeted genocide all the time, if they were engaged in kinetic war. Do you think Dave Smith and Tucker Carlson are going to come out and admit that they lied to their audience this entire time, whether they knew it or not, right? Let's be charitable. Let's say, oh, maybe they actually believed it, right? And they didn't know. Are they going to come and admit it? Are the people who watched them and bought into their nonsense, are they going to say, wow, I can't believe Tucker came in to, I can't believe Tucker completely lied to me all of this time, and I bought it. Are people going to do that? Of course not. I mean, maybe 2% of people will do that, but that's not the human operating system. Most people, especially those who are emotionally attached to this narrative from the smear merchants, Smith and Carlson, they're just going to double down and move the goalpost, right? They'll try to redefine what that is. Oh, but the 50,000 is, insert, goalpost moving excuse there. It's a sign when the people who have the inability to admit that they're wrong in this way, there's a couple of things going on. First, that is cognitive dissonance, right? That's these 7 signs of cognitive dissonance, changing the topic, right? They're just going to change the numbers. They're going to change the definition. They're going to change whatever was said or admitted to by Hamas to fit their framing of the world. And when people do that, for me, that is the most severe sign of insecurity, to the point of mental illness. People who can never admit that they're wrong no matter what. I'm wrong about a lot of stuff. We're all wrong about stuff. We all get things wrong. This is when I talk about these reframing exercises occasionally on the streams. The beginning of the day, what are 3 things that are going to make your day amazing? And what are things you're grateful for? And at the end of the day, what are 3 amazing things that happened today? But I also add this other thing, which is, what did I get wrong today? And it's very difficult for the ego to process things that we get incorrect, because we always reframe the world, then our narrative of our experience around the world, as though we did everything right. It's an instinctual thing. And the more insecure somebody is, the more they have to adhere to that. Whereas the people who are more secure are able to say, okay, yeah, you know what? I got that wrong. Some of you may have heard me on certain spaces or interviews, probably doing more on this topic on El Salvador and Bukele. And I was wrong. Yeah, I was completely wrong. I went there a couple of times, and okay, yeah, this is not good. This is not good what's happening in El Salvador. And it's the blind spot for that conservatives refuse to acknowledge. So when conservatives criticize liberals and say, oh, you're stuck in an echo chamber, it's not just them. It's not just them. We're all programmed that way, that our worldview is intrinsic to us, and it's important. So anyways, that's kind of my thoughts on, we now know all those numbers for 2 years was just brainwashing of people in the West, and how many of those people who were brainwashed will have the courage and confidence to come out and say, you know what, you're right. That was, I guess so. If Hamas has got to pay all these fighters, yeah, clearly that's not that's a kinetic war. And anyways, so enough on the Middle East, because I know sometimes people just get a little crazy when they start hitting the Middle East. I see there's already some people trying to. Oh, I love the jihad comments. But anyways, Cuba. I think this is an important story. So I mentioned this a while back. Well, not too long. The Trump administration is going so quickly. When Maduro was taken out, which was in the beginning of January 3rd, if I'm not mistaken. So Maduro is the dictator who followed Hugo Chavez in Venezuela. And I had lived in Colombia during that time of Venezuela, where idiot politicians in Canada used to celebrate this communist in Venezuela and say he's such a great freedom fighter, when in actuality he was arresting and killing his own people. At that time, I remember there was something like 80,000 people a year were going missing in Venezuela, and nobody in the West cared, right? All the lefties in Canada are like, oh, he's a freedom fighter. Like, yeah, why don't you have them string you up and burn you alive? And then you tell me how much he's a freedom fighter, right? Linda McQuaig is the one that pops into my mind. And the actor, the idiot from Lethal Weapon, the one I liked, the black guy, what was his name? Not Mel Gibson, Danny Glover, right? Danny Glover went down and met with Hugo Chavez, freedom fighter. And it's like, I wish somebody would just take everything he had. That's what those people deserve. This is why we're going to have another McCarthy, and it might be necessary, unfortunately, because these people, as I said before, fanatics. So anyways, once Maduro was out, it became very obvious to myself and many other people who have experience in Latin America, understand and have some contacts within this administration and how things operate, that Cuba was going to be next. And I think the 51st state meme we're seeing right now has been the distraction for the media to play them like for the fools that they are while they're working on Cuba. It's very interesting. So yesterday, a massive oil refinery was, or the largest oil refinery in Havana, erupted in flames. Oh yeah, it just erupted. I wonder what started that. Who knows? So this is according to an X account at War SURV. That they have some images and pictures of it online. But it's very interesting what's happening more broadly. And Cuba, we've seen there's been so much silence on this. I got to give the Trump administration credit, how they know to play the media, the foolish media. Cuba is facing a total energy collapse right now, and there's a U.S. blockade on Cuba as well for certain goods and certain energy and all sorts of stuff. And I think as of today, if I'm not mistaken, Cuba no longer has any fuel for aircraft in the whole country. So no planes are taking off there. Yeah, no refueling. That's why, if you noticed, about a month ago, I think it was, or a few weeks ago, that the major airlines that flew to Cuba announced that they're suspending flights to Cuba. And everyone's like, oh, is there going to be invasion? It's like, no, they don't have gas. They're just out of gas at this point. So right now there is a rationing on gasoline and fuels in Cuba. A maximum of 40 liters can be purchased, or about 3/4 of a tank of gas, or 2/3 of a tank of gas of an average car. And there's a 10-hour wait list to get fuel. So, all right, great. Sounds awesome. And you can only pay in US dollars. How ironic is that? If you want to get fuel in Cuba, you can only use US dollars. Can't use rubles, can't use yuan. US dollars is what they want. I think this is a sign of things to come. There's been a total public transport collapse, which I'm sure most people know. Whenever you see a car in Cuba, like when you see B-roll of car, that's somebody who works for the government. Like that's a government official that regular people just have to use public transit. So as a result, the work week has been reduced, and there's a call for remote working. Like, I don't know, they want all the Cubans to log on to Upwork. All of a sudden they want the internet, and the communists want some sort of free market. So, Cubans can go online and start working within the global economy and start making money that way. Isn't it ironic, right? The socialist system, the communist system that brings us all freedom and prosperity. Things always collapse and fall apart, and then they need to chase after the free market, just like the Chinese did, right? So there is this call for remote working as well. There's no fuel for tractors and machines, which means there's no money for agriculture. So of course the radical lefties are outraged. The climate radical lefties are outraged that the United States is blocking fuel into Cuba. Wait. I thought you all wanted green energy. I thought you all hated fuel. I thought you wanted us all to go electric cars here. All of a sudden, now you're outraged that Cuba doesn't have diesel and gasoline for agriculture. You got to pick one, commies. You got to pick one. It's so crazy. And so now they're looking for laborers to replace agricultural machines. They want to replace just people going back to like Mesopotamian times, right? Just plow with an ox. Okay, communism, socialism. That's what it gives you. Anyway, it's funny. And then Mexico's trying to send fuel without phasing reprisals from the U.S. Yeah, good luck, Shane Baum. Good luck. And what's interesting is Diaz Canal is open to talks with the United States. Now, I want to ask a bunch of you, because I know I'm way more into Latin America than many other people who perhaps watch my streams. Who is Diaz Canal without searching on the internet? Do you know? Because I know most people don't know who Diaz Canal is. He is the president of Cuba. That's right. Raul Castro has not been the president of Cuba since 2019. And I can't remember when the other dirtbag died, but it was years before, right? There's no Castro running the country now. So that regime has never been so weak. It's not like there's going to be a Soviet Union who's going to be able to step in. China is already losing its energy because of Venezuela. They're in damage control. They don't have enough electricity. China's collapsing on the inside anyways. By the way, love Chinese people and Chinese culture, but that party's just awful. Just get rid of them already. But anyways, so China's in no position. They don't have. They can't even go into Taiwan, right? When you don't have fuel for your airplanes, you can't invade another place. So it's never been such an opportune time where you don't have a Castro, you don't have the Soviet Union, you don't have the Chinese, you don't have any of the international assholes who always cause problems to get in the way from giving people in Cuba their right-deserved freedom. This is the perfect time. And you know what is the best part? God does have a sense of humor. That the Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, who holds all the keys to Cuba right now, is a Cuban dissident, or at least the family of Cuban dissidents in exile. That's right. An anti-communist in exile is now the Secretary of State and gets to smash Cuba. He must be on cloud nine. Like, him and his family must be so happy to be in that sort of situation, right? And I hope all the proto-commies in the West are understanding and not forgetting that God does have a sense of humor, and that hammer will come down upon you at some point in the future as well, if you continue what you're doing. So it's very interesting. So what's going to be happening moving forward with Cuba? Like, where do we see all of this going? Well, there is a military, how to describe this? There are some people that are looking for a transition, and there's apparently going to be talks and negotiations held in Mexico, and they're looking at a Venezuelan type transition, which is what's going on right now. So the grandnephew of Fidel Castro, son of Angela, I think was her name. Angela is the sister of Fidel Castro. There's speculation through leaks that his name is Oscar Perez Oliva, that he's right now the deputy prime minister and minister of foreign trade and foreign investment. He's head of technology imports for the country, and there's potential for a transition period. It's on the table, at least it seems. It seems like it's happening now, something, as I said before, similar to Venezuela. So why would Marco Rubio align with this nephew or grandnephew of Fidel Castro for a transition period to change Cuba in some way, shape, or form? Well, there's a couple of things. First, it does seem like Oscar Perez Oliva is, sorry, when you learn the Spanish accent, when you start, I know gringos get upset. We're like, well, why do you say it with such a Spanish accent? When you learn Spanish, when people say can't pronounce it properly, it sounds ridiculous. It's like nails on a chalkboard. If you don't learn Spanish, you don't get it. But if you learn it, it becomes very, that's why people do that. And so people ask that all the time. So so it seems like Oscar Perez Oliva is a closeted capitalist, that one of those go along to get along types, that who's open-minded to a free market or an open market. And so I think that's the first reason. The second thing is the reason this transition idea is important and could work, and why they're doing it in Venezuela. I think even Trump said it himself, is, well, look what happened in Iraq, right? That dummy Rumsfeld, him and the other, Cheney and all, what did they do? They come in and they fired the entire Ba'ath Party. Like, I have no use for the Ba'ath Party or some of the ideas of those people either. But, if you take everybody in the government, you invade their country, and you're in a volatile country that has history of violence, potentially, or revolution, and you just fire everybody, guess what's going to happen? You're going to have insurgency, especially if you marry that with Islamic extremism, right? So I don't think, people are always binary on the Iraq invasion. They're okay with the first one, fine. They're not okay with the second one, I guess because they didn't do it right. Like, why are they okay with the first one and not okay with the second one? Anyways, that's another frustrating thing. Inconsistency with peoples, right? That's why you don't ever say somebody's a hypocrite, because it's completely non-persuasive. So they don't want to run the risk of that same sort of instability in Cuba and Venezuela, more broadly. If you fire everybody, then it could descend into chaos. They're trying to do this without civil war as much as possible. And I think with Venezuela, I think there's an appetite for that. My experience with people in Latin America, doesn't matter they're left or right, they're very entrepreneurial, just because they're very independent. And so I think that's probably the best way to go. And that's why you see, the deputy leader of Venezuela, she turned on a dime 180 degrees. Now she's full, free market Americanism, just like that, right? It's just how it works there, right? So I figure, like, what can we learn from all of this? I think it's interesting. It shows, Trump came in and assembled a team like a business owner and structured it like a business owner would, with those sorts of incentives. Not money, but in business, money is the reward. In politics, success is the reward. And I think he took that approach, and already with Venezuela and with Cuba, he's just exposed how completely and utterly pathetic our entire political class has been for generations. Like, just completely pathetic. And, I said yesterday on the radio in Canada, I was on Mark Petroni's radio show. I said that I think Canada's case, Canada's very bloated, that we can just fire 60% of our government. Just fire everybody, 60% of them. Like, welcome to the free world. You're not in a communist country. Guess what? You're going to learn the skills of building a business or finding a new career. welcome to the party that the rest of us have to attend on a daily basis. And I'm starting to think maybe 60% no, maybe 90%. Right? I think I can get Canada's structure down to like 4 ministries, and that's it, right, on the federal level. Provincial, even more. Like in my province alone, we have 350,000 laws on our books. Like, let's just grab an AI prompt, let's grab OpenClaw, and let's let it sit down with our laws for a couple of weeks or a couple of minutes, however it takes, and just let's delete everything that's redundant, and let's program everything towards free market and get rid of everything that is an obstruction to economic prosperity in our country and in our province, right? Simple. So anyways, in the case of Canada, pink slips for everyone. In the case of Cuba, let's figure out a way to have them shift from this ideological cancer of communism into a free market. And maybe they can leapfrog countries like Canada, the Western world, and do it in a more efficient way. And that can be an experiment for the rest of democracies around the world. I don't know, just a take that I have, but I think basically the best way to describe it is, and I like this term, this both Elon Musk and Scott would talk about this. I think government needs to be completely re-engineered in many Western countries, the UK, Canada, the US to an extent. But maybe the opportunity, the test net for this could be Cuba, because at the end of the day, with our current structure, we don't live in the Victorian era, which is what it was designed for. So, and the last thing on Cuba is Trump's behavior to both Cuba and Venezuela. Have you noticed his demeanor and how he behaves on these issues? Did you notice this common trend with Cuba and Venezuela? Scott talked a little bit about this, and he always takes things from a position of strength. But I think it's more Trump is acting like their daddy, right? Like he's a daddy dealing with spoiled children, which is kind of what we see on the radical left, isn't it? Just spoiled, whiny people who think the universe is fair and have not learned that the universe is not fair. So I call it the daddy frame. So Trump is combing through Latin America with the daddy frame. Daddy is home now. You're going to cut out the bullshit, and we're going to get back to behaving properly. And I think that's why he's keeping them on a tight leash in Venezuela. He will keep them on a tight leash in Cuba. He's keeping Mexico on a tight leash. And I'm willing to bet Canada is going to be next on that list at some point. But yeah, he just treats them like Cesar Millan is training a dog. That's how he is getting everybody to cut out the BS and start behaving again. It's the human operating system. Once you understand it, it's easy to modify the settings. All right, Scott Adams had this AI prediction, and I'm going to shut this off. I'm running a little bit late. This was very interesting. There's an article I posted on Locals and on Substack from an interview on why Combinator is a YouTube channel I just came across recently, and they interviewed Peter Steinberger. So Peter Steinberger is the creator of, it was first called Claudebot and Moltbot, and now OpenClaw, I think is what it's called now. And the name of the episode is Why 80% of Apps Will Disappear. It's very interesting, and this is a lot of what I think both Elon Musk and Scott, I know they communicated because Elon followed Scott's Locals channel, was a subscriber. But they talked, the idea of that your cell phone is not going to have apps in the future, or not nearly as many, because you can just have an AI comb through all your data and generate apps on the fly to process what you need done in that moment. That your phone is just going to be a piece of glass with an AI. You're going to ask it to do something, and it's just going to do it in a better way than you thought of it being done. It's very interesting. I explained yesterday how an AI made dinner reservations. It couldn't contact with the restaurant through email. So it combed through the internet. It found a chat bot that it could communicate with through the API. It downloaded, set it up, and then the AI made a telephone call to the restaurant to make the reservations. And another one, which was another OpenClaw, was told to buy a car and was given some parameters and guidelines. And the AI bought a car, contacted a dealer, multiple dealerships, found a dealership car, the right specifications, negotiated the purchase, and saved the purchaser $4,200 off the MSRP. So that's going to be your phone that's doing that at some point, or whatever device that you're using. So it's pretty wild. It's great what's going on. So that was, a tip of the hat to Scott, who's said this repeatedly over the past couple of years, that you can move into a world where you're not going to have apps anymore. You're just going to have an AI. Once again, if you understand human OS, it becomes a lot easier to predict not only how we behave, but how the world is going to change moving forward, right? And so that's it. I know people have concerns about privacy. We're going to talk about that next time. We'll get into AI and privacy, because I think there's some things we understand, some things we miss. But that's going to be something to consider with all of these agents that are probably going to be fully in effect by the end of 2026, because things are moving so fast in AI. It's really hard to keep up. All right. The winter's almost over. The weather's getting warmer. Yesterday was the first time I could walk down the street and not have the sidewalks covered with snow. So you can navigate the city again. It's getting a little warmer. Days are getting a little bit longer. You guys are growing. So I appreciate all of you who are following my locals and Substack and YouTube and everything, and who are participating. You're all amazing. And I can see all of your inputs. Maureen says, I was a monthly functional human app for most of my life. Now I need 8535. Can I get an app for that? Rub 8535. You're very funny. Maureen's awesome. Thank you, Maureen, and thank you, Jess and DJ2R. Government should not interfere in the economy like it stays out of religion. Amen. Yeah, governments cannot improve an economy. They can only destroy them, which is why we want government as far away from the economy as possible. Just my personal opinion. And Heidi, I hope I've done more justice to Latin America and Latin American culture, like I was trying to yesterday. And I appreciate you, and I appreciate all of you joining and participating. I'm really starting to enjoy this. And yeah, I kind of made this a priority for 2026, that I wanted to focus on building us out, because when I had time prior, we all kind of came together and got to know each other. That's how I know Jess so well, who is very active in the Discord, and basically runs the meme channel at this point. But I love you guys. You're all amazing. Happy Valentine's Day. And if you think you don't have somebody who loves you, you do. You have me. And all of us who are watching today, we all got each other's backs. And at some point, we'll get all of us talking more and more and interacting more directly with each other. And that's just going to take a little bit of time. But you're all amazing. Go have an awesome day, and be good to somebody. You'll be amazed how people will reciprocate that. Heidi, I'm a Viking, but married to an Ecuadorian. Okay, so you're kind of like me, All right, you're all amazing. I love you all, and have an awesome day. And we'll see you tomorrow at 10:30 in the morning, just like today. All right, let me